John leaned back in his chair, the warm morning sunlight streaming through the kitchen window. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the room, mingling with the scent of pancakes cooking on the stove. Life in their quiet suburban neighborhood had settled into a comfortable routine, one that John had come to cherish. He glanced over at the kitchen counter where his wife, Leora, stood, her delicate hands moving deftly as she prepared breakfast. Leora was unlike anyone John had ever met. Tall and graceful, with an otherworldly beauty that drew stares wherever they went. She was an alien from the distant planet of Ziara. Her skin had a faint iridescent shimmer, and her eyes were a deep, mesmerizing shade of violet. Despite the vast differences in their backgrounds, they had fallen in love, married, and started a family. Their daughter, Ilara, was a perfect blend of their two worlds. At 6 years old, she had Leora's shimmering skin and John's green eyes. She was a curious and intelligent child, always asking questions and eager to learn about both Earth and Ziara. As John watched Ilara draw pictures at the kitchen table, he felt a surge of love and pride. His life was perfect, or so he thought. "Leora, have you seen my keys?" John asked, sipping his coffee. "They're on the counter next to the fruit bowl," Leora replied, her voice melodic and soothing. John found his keys and slipped them into his pocket. "Thanks, love. I'll drop Ilara off at school on my way to work." Leora smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes that John couldn't quite place. "John, there's something I need to talk to you about," she said, her voice trembling slightly. John's heart skipped a beat. Leora rarely seemed anxious, and her tone alarmed him. "What is it?" he asked, reaching out to take her hand. She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting his with a look of deep sorrow. "I have to leave, John. I have to go back to Ziara." The words hit him like a physical blow. "What, why? Is everything okay?" Leora looked away, tears welling up in her eyes. "There's an emergency on Ziara. My people need me. I don't know how long I'll be gone, but I have to go." John's mind raced, 1,000 questions and fears flooding in. "But what about Ilara? What about us?" Leora's grip on his hand tightened. "That's why I need you to take care of Ilara. She needs stability and love, and I know you'll provide that for her. I wish I didn't have to leave, but I have no choice." John struggled to process her words. "When do you have to go?" "Tomorrow," she said softly. The rest of the day passed in a blur. John tried to act normal for Ilara's sake, but his mind was consumed with worry and disbelief. That night, after putting Ilara to bed, he and Leora sat together in the living room, holding each other close. "John, I love you," Leora whispered. "I'll come back as soon as I can. Please take care of our daughter." "I will," John promised, his voice choked with emotion. "Just promise me you'll come back." Leora kissed him deeply, their tears mingling. "I promise." The next morning, Leora was gone. She left a note explaining her departure, but no details about the emergency or when she might return. John felt like a part of him had been ripped away, but he had to stay strong for Ilara. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. John juggled his job taking care of Ilara and managing the household on his own. The absence of Leora was a constant ache, but he found solace in his daughter. Ilara was resilient and brave, much like her mother. "I understand, Master," she replied softly. Zaltor's eyes narrowed. "Do not disappoint me, Tyria. Failure will not be tolerated." With that, he dismissed her, and she hurried out of the chamber, her mind racing with a mix of fear and hope. The thought of escape was tantalizing, but the risks were immense. Zaltor's reach was long, and his retribution would be swift and merciless if she were caught. As she prepared for the journey, Tyria's thoughts turned to the possibility of freedom. She had little to lose and everything to gain. The chance to start a new life, free from the chains of servitude, was a dream she had clung to for years. Now, that dream was within reach, if only she had the courage to seize it. The journey to Xandar Prime was long and arduous. Tyria traveled with a small entourage of Zaltor's most trusted soldiers. their ship cutting through the vast expanse of space with silent efficiency. The stars blurred past the viewports, a never-ending stream of light and darkness. Throughout the journey, Tyria remained vigilant, her senses on high alert. She had to be careful, biding her time until the right moment presented itself. The soldiers were well-trained and highly disciplined, their loyalty to Zaltor absolute. Any sign of disobedience or betrayal would be met with immediate and lethal force. As they approached Xandar Prime, Tyria's heart raced with anticipation. The planet loomed ahead, a vibrant sphere of blue and green, its surface crisscrossed with bustling cities and sprawling trade networks. It was a place of opportunity, a beacon of hope in the vast emptiness of space. The ship descended smoothly, landing at one of the many spaceports that dotted the planet's surface. The air was crisp and clean, a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere of Zaltor's palace. Tyria took a deep breath, savoring the taste of freedom, however fleeting it might be. The delegation was met by a group of Xandarian officials, their demeanor polite but guarded. Tyria stood at the back of the group, her eyes scanning the bustling crowd for any sign of an opportunity. The spaceport was a hive of activity, with ships coming and going, traders haggling over goods, and travelers rushing to their destinations. As the delegation made its way through the spaceport, Tyria's mind raced with plans and contingencies. She knew she had to act quickly, before the delegation settled into their accommodations, and her movements were closely monitored. The noise and chaos of the spaceport provided the perfect cover for her escape. She spotted a small maintenance hatch, partially concealed behind a stack of cargo crates. It was a risky move, but it was her best chance. She lagged behind the group, pretending to fumble with her belongings. When she was sure no one was watching, she slipped through the hatch, her heart pounding in her chest. The maintenance tunnels were dark and cramped, but they offered a labyrinthine network of pathways that could lead her away from the spaceport and into the city. She moved quickly, her senses heightened, listening for any signs of pursuit. The air was cool and damp, the sound of distant machinery echoing through the tunnels. After what felt like hours, Tyria emerged from the tunnels into a bustling marketplace. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the city. She blended into the crowd, her heart still racing, her mind focused on finding a safe place to hide. The marketplace was filled with people from all walks of life, their faces a blur of colors and expressions. Tyria's eyes scanned the stalls, looking for anything that could help her. She needed new clothes, something to help her blend in and avoid detection. She approached a vendor selling simple garments, her hands trembling as she selected a plain tunic and trousers. "How much?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The vendor eyed her suspiciously. 5 credits. Tyria fumbled for the small pouch of coins she had managed to keep hidden, handing over the money with shaking hands. She quickly changed into the new clothes, discarding her slave garb in a nearby alley. It was a small transformation, but it made her feel less conspicuous, less like a fugitive. As she wandered through the city, Tyria's thoughts turned to her future. She had no plan, no resources, and no allies, but she was free, and that was all that mattered. She would find a way to survive, to build a new life far from Zaltor's reach. Night fell, and the city lights flickered to life, casting a soft glow over the streets. Tyria found a quiet corner in a rundown part of town, curling up in a makeshift bed of discarded blankets. Exhaustion washed over her, and she allowed herself to drift into a fitful sleep, her dreams filled with visions of freedom and the haunting memory of chains. Morning came too soon, the sounds of the city rousing her from her restless slumber. Tyria stretched, her muscles sore from the hard ground. She knew she couldn't stay hidden forever. She needed to find work, to establish herself in this new world. As she ventured out into the bustling streets, she noticed a flyer posted on a nearby wall. It advertised a job fair, seeking workers for various positions in the city. Tyria's heart skipped a beat. This could be her chance to start anew, to build a life free from the shadow of her past. The job fair was held in a large plaza, filled with booths and stands representing different employers. Tyria wandered through the crowd feeling a mix of hope and anxiety. She approached a booth advertising positions in a local cantina, her heart pounding in her chest. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Are you still hiring?" The man behind the booth looked up, his eyes warm and friendly. "Yes, we are. Do you have any experience in hospitality?" Tyria hesitated. "A little. I'm a quick learner." He smiled. "That's good enough for me. Fill out this form and we'll see what we can do." "Good job tonight, Tyria," Kira said with a smile. "You're fitting in nicely." Tyria returned the smile, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. "Thanks, Kira. I appreciate it." As she stepped out into the cool night air, Tyria took a deep breath, savoring the quiet. The city was still bustling, but the noise was a distant hum compared to the lively chaos of the cantina. She walked slowly, her mind drifting as she replayed the events of the evening. Her new life was still fragile, but it was hers, and she was determined to make the most of it. The memories of her past haunted her, but each day brought her closer to the future she dreamed of. A future where she was free, where she could be whoever she wanted to be. Tyria found a small apartment in a quiet part of town, a modest space that was a far cry from the opulence of Zaltor's palace, but felt infinitely more valuable. It was her sanctuary, a place where she could finally breathe without the weight of chains. She decorated it with simple furnishings, adding personal touches that made it feel like home. She spent her days working at the cantina and her evenings exploring the city. Xandar Prime was a vibrant world, full of life and energy. She marveled at the diversity of its inhabitants, the way different cultures and species coexisted in a harmonious blend. It was a far cry from the rigid, oppressive environment she had known under Zaltor's rule. One day, as she wandered through a bustling marketplace, Tyria stumbled upon a small shop selling trinkets and curiosities from across the galaxy. Intrigued, she stepped inside, her eyes widening at the array of items on display. There were intricately carved figurines, shimmering crystals, and strange devices that hummed with energy. "Welcome," a voice said, drawing her attention. The shopkeeper, a tall, slender man with sharp features and piercing blue eyes, smiled warmly at her. "Feel free to look around." Tyria nodded, her curiosity piqued. She wandered through the shop, admiring the craftsmanship of the items. Her gaze fell on a small, delicate necklace, its pendant a swirling pattern of silver and blue. She picked it up, feeling a strange connection to the piece. "That's a beautiful choice," the shopkeeper said, approaching her. "It's said to bring good luck and protection to its wearer." Tyria hesitated, the price tag a stark reminder of her limited funds. "It's lovely, but I can't afford it." The shopkeeper studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Tell you what, I'll give you a discount. Consider it a welcome gift to Xandar Prime." Her eyes widened in surprise. "Really? Thank you." He nodded, ringing up the necklace and handing it to her with a smile. "Take care, and may it bring you good fortune." As Tyria left the shop, the necklace clutched tightly in her hand, she felt a renewed sense of hope. Small acts of kindness like this reminded her that not everyone in the galaxy was like Zaltor. There were good people out there, people who would help her if she let them. Days turned into weeks, and Tyria continued to adjust to her new life. She learned the ins and outs of the cantina, becoming more confident in her interactions with the patrons. Her friendship with Kira deepened, the older woman becoming a mentor and confidant. One evening, as Tyria was cleaning up after a busy night, Kira approached her with a thoughtful expression. "Tyria, I've been meaning to ask you something," she said, her tone serious. "Where did you come from? I mean, before you came to Xandar Prime?" Tyria froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been careful to keep her past a secret, not wanting to draw attention or pity. But Kira's genuine concern made her hesitate. Maybe it was time to open up, to trust someone with her story. She filled out the form with trembling hands, handing it back to him with a sense of nervous anticipation. He glanced over it, nodding approvingly. "Welcome aboard," he said. "You can start tomorrow." Relief washed over her, and she managed a small smile. It was a small step, but it was a step towards freedom. The cantina was a lively place, a hub of activity where locals and travelers alike came to unwind and share stories. As Tyria stepped through the doors for her first shift, the noise and bustle of the establishment overwhelmed her senses. The clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversations, and the occasional burst of laughter created a symphony of sound that was both comforting and intimidating. She was greeted by Kira, the head waitress, a woman in her late 30s with a no-nonsense demeanor and a kind smile. Kira gave Tyria a quick tour of the cantina, showing her where everything was and explaining the basics of her duties. "You'll start by bussing tables and helping out in the kitchen," Kira said. "Once you get the hang of things, we can move you to waiting tables. Just stick close to me, and you'll be fine." Tyria nodded, grateful for Kira's guidance. The work was hard, but it was honest, and it gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. She threw herself into her tasks, eager to prove her worth and make a fresh start. The patrons of the cantina were a diverse bunch, a mix of humans and aliens from all corners of the galaxy. Tyria found herself fascinated by their stories, snippets of conversation that hinted at adventures and lives far different from her own. She kept her head down and did her job, but she couldn't help but listen, her imagination painting vivid pictures of distant worlds and daring exploits. As the days turned into weeks, Tyria began to find her rhythm. The staff at the cantina welcomed her warmly, their camaraderie a stark contrast to the isolation she had felt as Zaltor's slave. She formed tentative friendships, sharing laughs and stories during their breaks. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope, a belief that she could build a new life here. One evening, as the cantina was winding down, a group of rowdy traders entered, their loud voices and boisterous laughter drawing the attention of everyone in the room. They settled at a table near the back, their animated discussion punctuated by frequent bursts of laughter. Tyria watched them out of the corner of her eye, curious about their stories, but wary of their rambunctious behavior. Kira approached the table to take their order, her calm demeanor unwavering despite the traders' raucousness. Tyria admired Kira's composure, hoping to learn from her example. As Kira returned to the bar to fetch their drinks, one of the traders caught Tyria's eye and winked, a playful grin spreading across his face. "Hey there, pretty lady," he called out. "What's your name?" Tyria hesitated, her instinct to avoid attention clashing with her desire to fit in. She forced a smile, reminding herself that she was free now, that she could interact with people without fear. "Tyria," she replied softly. The trader's grin widened. "Tyria, huh? That's a beautiful name. I'm Jax. Why don't you join us for a drink?" She shook her head, her smile wavering. "I'm working. Maybe another time." Jax shrugged, turning back to his companions. "Your loss," he said with a chuckle. As the night wore on, the traders' antics grew louder, their laughter filling the cantina. Despite their rowdiness, they seemed harmless, more interested in having a good time than causing trouble. Tyria busied herself with her tasks, occasionally glancing over at their table. When her shift finally ended, Tyria slipped into the back room to change out of her work clothes. She was exhausted, but it was a good kind of tired, the kind that came from a day of honest work. As she headed for the door, Kira called out to her. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak. "I was a slave," she said quietly, "to an alien tyrant named Zaltor. I escaped during a trade summit and ended up here." Kira's eyes widened in shock and sympathy. "Oh, Tyria, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." Tyria shook her head, a small smile tugging at her lips. "It's okay. I'm free now, thanks to you and this job. I'm building a new life, and that's all that matters." Kira placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You're strong, Tyria. Stronger than you know. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask." Tyria nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. She had found more than just a job here. She had found a community, a place where she belonged, and for the first time in a long time, she felt truly hopeful about the future. As she lay in bed that night, the necklace resting on her bedside table, Tyria allowed herself to dream of the possibilities that lay ahead. She was free, she was strong, and she was determined to create a life filled with love, friendship, and hope.